I'm calling to order this hearing a roundtable. This is a public roundtable. It's being jointly held by the Committee of the Whole, which I chair, and the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor, which is chaired by Council Member Anita Bonds. I'm Phil Mendels, Chair of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Friday, December 20th, 2024. Time is 10:42 in the morning, and we are holding this hearing a roundtable in room 412 of the John A. Wilson Building. This hearing is I think it's being live streamed on the council's website, www.dccouncil.gov. May or may not be available live on the cable channel 13, but it will be available. It's being recorded and will be available. The subject of this hearing, a roundtable, is PR 25-1095, entitled The Working Conditions and Compensation Agreement between the District of Columbia Public Schools and the Washington Teachers Union Local 6 of the American Federation of Teachers Emergency Approval Resolution of 2024. This legislation was submitted by the mayor on December 6th of this year and will be deemed approved on Wednesday, January 15th without council action. The resolution approves a collective bargaining agreement, or CBA, between the District of Columbia Public Schools and the Washington Teachers Union. The CBA includes a 4% retroactive bonus, retroactive to the beginning of this year, and this school year, and prospective increases to teacher salary and benefits through fiscal year 2028. The Chief Financial Officer estimates the funds are sufficient to cover the 5-year cost or 4-year cost, I'm not quite sure which. Our financial plan is 4 years, of $238.9 million. The committees are interested in ensuring that the CBA before the council matches the terms agreed upon by the parties at the conclusion of the negotiations. The committees are also interested in identifying dates for when each of the terms of the contract shall be implemented. And of course, we're also interested in knowing the payment schedules that the CBA requires. So this is really just a hearing or a roundtable to ensure that the document that the council has is complete and correct, as well as to go over what the implementation schedule looks like. This hearing is being co-chaired by me and Councilmember Bonds. I'm going to turn to Councilmember Bonds, and then we have at least one other council member with us. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes, thank you, and good morning, everyone, and to our witnesses who are before us. I just want to add, excuse me. I want to add that this resolution will approve a collective bargaining agreement impacting more than 5,000 active teachers, social workers, therapists, coaches, and other school personnel. And it will be, in fact, it will be effective October 1, 2023 through September 30th, 2028. And while the contract is retroactive by 1 year, once the negotiations began, they were concluded within the year. And I believe this is a new record for DC labor agreements, and I applaud them for moving ultimately swiftly to make the reality that we have before us today. With that said, it's a great pleasure to congratulate the Washington Teachers Union, the District of Columbia Public Schools, and the Office of Labor and Collective Bargaining for reaching a consensus and producing the agreement that is before us today. Now, this agreement works toward ratifying and issues with teacher retention, staff shortages, challenging workloads, and class coverage when a teacher takes leave from work. In most instances, these issues were considered by addressing equitable workloads and the assertion of disparate treatment concerning compensation, hiring, and environmental justice. Today, among other provisions, we will hear how the terms of this agreement ensure that our teachers' compensation remains among the highest salaries in the nation. Moreover, we hope to learn that this contract recognizes the dedication of our teachers while also acknowledging daily operational needs and prioritizing the concerns of educators as well as their health and well-being needs. My thanks to all who were involved in getting this contract signed. I know that it took a lot of tough conversations. I had the pleasure of witnessing some, but we got the deal done. And I commend and thank everyone involved for this hard work. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for moving swiftly to bring this matter to light before the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. And I should note, it's my intention that we will bring this before the council at its legislative meeting on January 7th for affirmative action. Councilmember Fruman, you are here. Do you have a statement?
Sure. Thank you very much, Chairman Mendelson. I want to congratulate the parties on concluding this agreement. I think that it's an enormous accomplishment to have gotten this done. I think the provisions on wages are great, but then there are also other elements here about working conditions that I think are really important. The biggest thing for me is that you were able to conclude a multi-year contract. So I, for the last 2 years, have been complaining, when are we going to get a contract done? First last year and then again this year. And we got it done, and we now all have the luxury to not have to deal with this for 3 more years. So congratulations to everyone involved on a great agreement and a multi-year agreement. Doesn't mean we stop working on things to improve working conditions for teachers in the interim, but this is a great achievement, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Now, if I follow the witness list, I have Jackie Pogue-Lyons before the Chancellor. She is testifying virtually. Ms. Bell, are you testifying or are you just here? Okay, so we'll hear from Ms. Pogue-Lyons. And the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chairman Mendelson. Good morning, City Council. Please forgive me if there's a delay, but thank you for the opportunity to discuss with you the tentative contract agreement that the Washington Teachers Union and DC Public Schools reached in October. I'm Jacqueline Pogue-Lyons, president of the Washington Teachers Union. This 5-year tentative agreement, we believe, is fair for educators and good for students. And more importantly, we believe it will greatly improve working conditions that our educators have said they need for a better, more respectful environment. To say that WTU members are satisfied with the agreement would be an understatement. It received a whopping 96% yes vote in favor of it. We hope that the DC Council also gives its approval quickly so we can put it in motion. I'd like to outline some highlights of the TA and let you know why these provisions are so important for teachers, staff, and students. There will be 4 weekly morning blocks reserved for teacher planning. This is an increase of 2 additional hours of weekly planning time, than they had 2 years ago. With a full teaching schedule, after-school activities, and homework grading in the evenings, teachers have very little time to plan. So these morning blocks will be a good thing. DCPS will also contribute to 10,000 hours of leave each year to the WTU Sick Leave Bank for use by eligible members. The contract will allow 2 paid wellness days, 1 full day, and 2 half days, where schools will be closed for teachers and students. Teachers and students are dealing with a lot of social and emotional issues like burnout, particularly since the pandemic, and these days will provide some welcome relief. Teachers who use the WTU Maternity Paternity Leave Bank will be able to retain 10 sick days before utilizing parental leave benefits. This means new parents won't have to take unpaid leave. There will be new protections to ensure that DCPS will equitably and fairly distribute the workloads of related service providers like social workers and counselors. There's an agreement to study inequities related to school lunch assignments impacting elementary school teachers. For the athletic trainers, there will be protections to ensure there is appropriate equipment to keep student athletes safe. As for compensation, the tentative agreement calls for a 4% bonus for FY24, a 2% raise for FY 25, a 3% raise for FY 26, a 3% raise for FY 26, and a 4% raise for FY 27. This works out to a more than 13% compounded wage increase for teachers over the next 4 years, plus the 4% bonus for FY 24. Two more things that we worked out that we hope will be taken very seriously. We signed a memorandum of agreement to develop and implement a curriculum that infuses climate literacy through a racial social justice lens and advocate for the creation, expansion, and maintenance of outdoor spaces in the district. We signed another memorandum of agreement on diversity of instructional staff. This is intended to show DCPS's commitment to recruiting and keeping more teachers of color and advocate for policies that promote diversity in the workplace. DCPS would also be required to regularly provide WTU with data relevant to assessing if there are any racial disparities in hiring and compensation for teachers in the district. Taken together, we believe the tentative agreement will provide a big step forward in helping the district retain and recruit great teachers. If you don't show respect for educators through better working conditions and decent raises, you won't be able to keep and retain them. This contract goes a long way to giving our educators the time, support, and resources they need to do their job well and help their students. Again, I'd like you to thank everyone for working on this contract. And again, forgive me for the delay.
Thank you, Ms. Pogue-Lyons. Will you submit to us a copy of your statement?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So I will ask just a couple questions. As far as you know, WTU's looked at the document submitted to the council and it is complete and correct?
Yes, sir.
And I do intend to ask the chancellor about the implementation schedule for some of those task forces or committees.
Yes. Particularly.
Particularly,
I was just going to say, particularly those parts of the contract that take place as soon as it is approved by the city council.
okay. I did want to ask, I noted the Joint Extra Duty Pay Committee, that the contract legislation refers to it being convened no later than May 30th, 2010.
Yes, that's been in the contract for a while, and those of us who've been around for a long time at the WTU have found it very helpful in implementing that part of the contract. So we're hopeful that we can do that again.
So that committee exists and it just is a matter of continuing?
It does exist, but we've let it fall to the wayside a lot of times. And we found in our office at the WTU that it has been quite helpful. And we'd like to continue doing that, having that committee.
Okay, thank you. Let me turn to colleagues.
Thank you.
Co-Chair Bonds?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. Lyons. I look forward to having a chance to certainly read it, and you're going to submit it, so thank you so much. I wanted to just ask a little bit about this process that you spoke of, where you are anticipating that the school system will inform the union on the hiring goals as they move forward. Can you tell me how you expect that they will inform you, or is there a regular process of exchange of information or information that would be coming to you? Help me kind of understand how you're going to stay on top of whether or not we're meeting those goals.
Well, we will reach out to DCPS and ask them to send us the data. We think this data is important. Particularly, we've been talking about it for probably over the last 4 years. The research that we've gotten from American University on impact. And we found that American University found that impact is racist and biased, particularly against Brown and Black teachers. And those brown and Black teachers who work in underserved communities. And we have anecdotal knowledge from our teachers who feel like impact has been biased. And we feel like that is one of the reasons why we don't keep and retain our teachers of color. We get them, but we don't keep them. And so this data would be important because we've never received this before. And we're hoping that this data will help us get and keep our teachers of color, particularly those who work in underserved communities.
Thank you. So it sounds to me like you're sharing with us that there are questions about the recruitment process that public schools uses. Is that what I'm hearing, or is there something else?
The retention of those teachers. How do we get and keep those teachers? I mean, we're blessed that we live in a diverse city, so we get teachers more so than in other communities, diverse teachers. We just don't keep them. And when you have research that has shown that it is biased and racist, we have to work together to figure out how we're going to get and keep these teachers, especially when the majority of the teachers, the majority of the students that we teach are brown and Black children.
All right. Well, I hear you on that. I'm just stumped on trying to understand what it is that happens during the recruitment process that would lead us to understand that we have the diverse mix of teachers that we aim to hire. And then I understand what you're saying about the retention part. How do we keep them? But I'm trying to understand where are we recruiting? Is that information important to your data concern?
We would
When I
love
say where, what part of the country, what kind of schools are we looking at as an example?
Well, we recruit from all over. We love when we also get homegrown teachers. Again, speaking as someone that's been working for DC Public Schools for 31 years, we want to keep those teachers. We're not keeping them like we did 20 years ago and 25 years ago. And I think that's impacted the results that we get from our students, the outcomes that we get from our students, because we're not getting and keeping our teachers. And everyone knows from the research that the teacher is the single most important factor in great outcomes in students. And you can't be what you don't see. And so we need to have, not that we don't love the diversity of this city, but we want our students to be exposed to teachers that look like them. And we know that we're not going to get the excellent teachers that we have unless we keep them for five or more years. And so how are we going to do that?
All right. Well, thank you very much. It sounds like there is a definitive profile of what we're looking for in the way of teaching staff, and then we are concerned with how we hold on to those individuals. So I'll talk to the chancellor a little bit about that and see what their model is, because surely there must be a model process. And I think we need to know more about that process so that we can really meet some of the goals that you are looking forward to. Thank you, Chairman. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Ms. Polkline, you're saying it's, with regard to diversity, it's not so much a recruitment issue as it is a retention issue.
We can always work on all ends, but yes, we need to make sure that we get great teachers and keep them, particularly teachers of color, particularly male teachers of color. We get them, but we don't keep them. We need to put a lot of work into our induction programs, and we need to get the data from DC to see who are these teachers coming in? What's the salary that they're given? Who's receiving the impact bonuses and who's not receiving the impact bonuses, and lots of training on bias. We still need a lot of training on bias. And unfortunately, WTU is not a part of that training or doesn't even know what the training is.
Thank you. Councilmember Fruman.
Thank you very much, Chairman Mendelson. Congratulations, Ms. Poglyans. Great agreement, really a wonderful accomplishment. Great that you got so many things done on the working conditions front. Lots of reasons to celebrate, and a 99% vote, I guess, is another one of those things to celebrate. You sort of went into this, one of the issues that's been out there at the various hearings that we have on education and the contract relates to impact, which is not a subject of negotiation. And there have been times where I have thought, should we do something to try to bring the parties together, bring you and DCPS and experts together to think collaboratively about how we might revise the evaluation system to get to something that had a broader sense of consensus. And folks have suggested, oh, it should be part of the negotiations. I don't think that's in the cards. Then maybe there should be a task force where people work together. Now, when you have a multi-year contract, so you're not going to be back at the table for a long time, when you think about what are open issues that you would really like to work together with DCPS on, I think the evaluation system and teacher retention is probably top of your list. Do you have any thoughts about how something like that could be structured so that there was a systematic look at how these how there might be revisions to the evaluation system and how it might support retention?
I would say it's probably number one on my list as far as what we need to work on is impact. I don't think impact, I was around when impact was started, and it was supposed to help get and keep and retain great teachers. It was supposed to also deliver great outcomes for students. It hasn't given us those two things that it was supposed to give us. And it has also been found to be racist and biased. So I would love if we had a law that said teachers could come to the table when it comes to deciding how we're evaluated. I think teachers sometimes can be the harshest critics of other teachers. And if you look around in other parts of the country, particularly right next door, Montgomery County, we've been working heavily with Pittsburgh. We've been working with heavily with Cleveland. And these are places where teachers are at the table deciding how people are evaluated, how teachers are evaluated. And if you consider us professionals, I think this is an idea that's long overdue. So I would love to have conversations with DCPS and the city about how we can make it so that we come to the table.
So I hear you on that, but I mean, I don't think you're going to be back at the table for 3 years. So I'm wondering, what could you do that could spark discussions and work collaboratively in the shorter term? Are there things that you could be doing? And the word impact becomes a lightning rod, but really some of the ideas, there might be closer to consensus around some of the ideas of how it might be revised than the up or down on the word impact. So I would urge you to think about, yeah, maybe it should be a subject of negotiation, but that's a someday thing. What's a this year thing that you could be doing, working collaboratively with DCPS on these issues? And I plan to ask the chancellor the same thing.
Well, like I said, and I keep repeating it, and I guess I'm beating a dead horse, I find it abhorrent that we have an evaluation system in this city, as diverse as it is, that has been found to be racist and biased, and that we need to address that. And seriously, how do we look into it? And yes, I agree with you. We're not allowed to discuss how we're evaluated during contract negotiations. But again, we have some time now that we don't have to work on contracts for a number of years to really seriously think about what type of reforms. I'm not saying you need to make a name change of it, but we have to make some reforms. Again, if we're thinking about getting great outcomes for students, and if we're thinking about getting and keeping great teachers, these are things that Impact was supposed to do when it first started, and it hasn't done that.
All right, thank you very much, and congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. So I'm going to move now to the executive. Thank you, President Pogue Lyons.
Thank you, sir.
We have Lindsay Maxwell, who I believe is participating virtually. He's the Director of the Office of Labor Relations and Collective Bargaining, and Dr. Louis Farabee, who is in person, who's Chancellor of the DC Public Schools. Mr. Maxwell, you want to go first?
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Good morning, Chairperson Mendelson, Chairperson Bonds, members of the committees and committee staff. I'm E. Lindsay Maxwell II, the Director of the Office of Labor Relations and Collective Bargaining. I am pleased to testify before you today on behalf of Mayor Bowser regarding the compensation and working conditions agreement between the DC Public Schools and the Washington Teachers Union. I want to take a few minutes to highlight the work that DCPS and OLRCB recently accomplished in partnership with WTU. On December 12th of last year, DCPS, OLRCB, and WTU held their initial bargaining session. Over the next 10 months, together, we methodically advanced through negotiations, intent on stewarding the district's resources wisely to support our valued teachers as they continue to strive to improve outcomes for DCPS students. On behalf of the mayor, we proudly present to you this new agreement with Washington Teachers Union. The deal is historic for many reasons. First, negotiations only took 10 months. 10 months. Second, it's historic because this contract covers a 5-year term from FY24 to FY28. It includes a 4% bonus for FY24, a 2% increase for FY25, a 3% increase in both years 26 and 27, and a 4% increase in FY28. This amounts to an increase in wages for our teachers of 12% over the next 5 years and demonstrates Mayor Bowser's commitment to supporting DCPS by making an equitable investment in the professionals who play a critical role in improving the learning environment and the academic progress of students in the District of Columbia. Many thanks to Mayor Bowser for her leadership in this effort, City Administrator Kevin Donahue, and Chancellor Farabee and his outstanding team at DCPS. Thank you also to the team at OLRCB and specifically my co-lead negotiator, Michael Kentoff, who did the lion's share of heavy lifting to get this done. I'd also like to send a special thank you and congratulations to WTU, its negotiations team, and its lead negotiator, Jackie Pogue Lyons, for an agreement well negotiated. And finally, I'd like to thank you, Chairperson Mendelson and Chairperson Bonds, and the members of your committees and staff for your commitment to being critical allies in this effort, and for your speedy review of these agreements, ensuring that our teachers can reap the benefits of these contracts as quickly as possible. I look forward to our continued work together to achieve our shared goals and to support the public servants who deliver essential services to the district residents every day. Your commitment to labor relations in DC government will continue to make the district a great place to live and work by giving more district employees a fair shot. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. This concludes my remarks, and I now look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thank you. Let's hear from the Chancellor, and then we'll have some questions.
Good morning, Chairman Mendelson, Chairwoman Bonds, council members, staff, and members of the public. I am Dr. Louis D. Farabee, Chancellor of District of Columbia Public Schools. I am joined today by members of my team, General Counsel, Ms. Harris Lindsay, and Deputy Chancellor, Mr. Ashley, who leads operations and finance for the district. I know this contract is of great interest to the council and the public, so I know you have questions, so I'll keep my statement brief today. But I would like to begin by thanking the more than 5,000 members of the Washington Teachers Union and DCPS educators who show up every day to educate the young people of the District of Columbia. We have an amazing educator workforce here in DCPS that worked hard to ensure our students are loved, challenged, and prepared for bright futures. This contract before you builds on a recent historic contract between DCPS and the Washington Teachers Union approved last year, and both agreements continue to provide DCPS educators with the best compensation in the country. This contract also provides and supports and resources so our educators can bring their best to their school communities. And as Mayor Bowser, President Polk Lyons, and I have said, this agreement shows that we can achieve great things when we work together with a common goal of putting our students first. I want to thank everyone from DCPS who's worked on this agreement, including our partners at the Office of Labor Relations and Collective Bargaining and the Washington Teacher Union for the work that we've done to negotiate this contract over the past year, and reiterate with Director Maxwell said, a record 10-month contract negotiation period. This contract is for 5 years, the longest contract in recent memory, and that provides several benefits to the DCPS educators, including additional compensation, including a bonus for last year and additional raises this year in the next 3 fiscal years. Increasing the number of morning blocks that are teacher initiated for planning from 2 to 4 each week, paid wellness days during the school year, improved benefits for new parents, additional resources to support our athletic trainers, compensations for providing classroom coverage, and memorandums of agreement around climate and diversity. You heard from President Polk Lyons that we both share interests in those areas. We look forward to implementing the contract in partnership with the Washington Teacher Union, as we've done in the past with contracts. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about this agreement and the positive impact it will have for our educators and ultimately our students. I look forward to answering your questions at this time.
Thank you, Chancellor. So when I have these hearings, I'm into asking questions instead of sitting around and being laudatory, but it is worth congratulating that we have the contract. It's important to do that. My first question to Mr. Maxwell, and this is not well, let me just ask the question. We received the contract, the council did, on or about December 6th, but the signing of the tentative agreement was by the chancellor and the president of the union October 11th. Why does it take about 2 months for us to get it?
Thank you for that question, Chairman. There's a few different things that happen in the process. First of all, the tentative agreements are actually, when you look at them, they're usually physically separate documents. And so what has to be done is the contract, once we're completed with it, has to actually be put together into one comprehensive document. And then it has to be verified. So that does take some time. On top of that, we have to compile the pay schedules. This is done in conjunction with DCHR, OPRS, and OCTO. So there's a little bit of time that it takes to get that together that really falls outside of our office. And then finally, there's always the two-step process to get a fiscal impact statement from the OCFO, and then to also get a legal sufficiency from the Office of the Attorney General. And that usually takes a little bit of time. And so that's why you have the 2-month delay in between signing the final TAs and actually submitting it to the council.
Thank you for that. So we received the document, as I said, on or about December 6th, and it was filed as resolution PR 25-1095. 2 days ago, we received a corrected schedule that corrects, I think it's the last page of the document, replaces the pay schedule. So my next question to you, Mr. Maxwell, is the document that we now have with that corrected pay schedule, is that complete and accurate?
It is complete and accurate.
Chancellor Farabee, is it complete and accurate?
Yes,
Not that I expect a different answer, but.
It is complete and accurate.
Thank you for that. My next question. So there are a number of task forces. Actually, I think before I go there, there's a retroactive payment that's going to be made for this year. I think doesn't matter. It's 3 or 4% for this year. Goes back to what period of time? Like September 1st, October 1st, beginning of the school year?
4% retroactive bonus is for fiscal year 24.
for the fiscal year. So it goes back to, and when will those payments be made?
It speaks in the contract we negotiated that all payments will be made within 120 days after council approval.
I'm doing some math. So that's 4 months after council approval.
Yes.
And as I said, I'm looking to present this, Councilmember Bonds and I are looking to present this January 7th, so 4 months from then. Are there any other payments to be made this year, Mr. Maxwell?
No, sir. The only thing that happens is the retro bonus, and then we make the adjustment for the salaries that actually, the new salary schedules that will move us forward.
But the adjustment in the salary should be for next school year?
Well, we're currently in the FY 25. So the new payment schedules, we take care of the retro, and then we flip the switch to be sure that moving forward, they get the right pay according to the schedule for the remainder of 25 and moving forward, 26, 27, and 28.
So will that involve any retroactive checks?
Just the retro for FY 24 and the little bit of 25 that there would be, yes.
And so when would those checks be paid?
Within 120 days of council approval.
So both what you're calling the bonus for 24 and what would be retro for 25, that is prior to the adjustment in the salary, those will both be paid within 120 days of council approval.
That's correct.
There are a number of committees and task forces and so forth. I think this might be more a question to you, Chancellor. The Full and Equal Partnership Committee, when will that get off the ground?
So we meet with the Washington Teaching Union in the new year, and we will prioritize the implementation of the various committees and working groups to ensure that we have addressed the issues that are most urgent to the union and also the DCPS at that time, because there are a number of them that need to be implemented.
So it'd be the same answer for the new teacher mentoring and induction program joint committee?
That is correct.
And the same answer for the joint special education committee?
That is correct.
What about, well, and the same answer for the labor management committee regarding retirement?
Yeah, any committee that is outlined in the contract, we will set a schedule and again, prioritize those issues that are most urgent.
Now, there's another one which you heard me ask President Poglines, the Joint Extra Duty Pay Committee. I don't quite understand. The contract says WTU and DCPS agree to establish a joint committee to review all policies and make recommendations regarding extra duty assignments, including compensation no later than May 30th, 2010.
Yeah, I think some of the language that you're referencing is language that has been in the contract historically. And again, if those are urgent issues, then we're happy to address those with the Washington Teaching Union when we return in the new year.
So this would be the same as the other committees. That is, you'll be meeting with WTU early in the new year.
That's
and
correct.
Prioritize.
Correct. And we prioritize, we typically set a schedule and a cadence for the meetings depending upon the issue that we're addressing.
I think I see this as a potential performance oversight question. Where are we with the establishment of these committees? There's also a climate curriculum task force. Same answer?
Same answer.
So this is not quite the same, but the contract has a MOU or MOA rather regarding diversity of instructional staff. My understanding is it says by October 1st, 2024, DCPS will provide WTU with the following data. Has that been done?
We will provide the latest updated data to the WTU. I think there's some misunderstanding because there were some data points shared today that were not accurate. For example, our retention rate for teachers of color outpace the retention rate of their white peers. Same for our Latino Hispanics. So we'll be sure that the Washington Teacher Union have the most updated numbers.
Okay, but what I have before me says by October 1st, 2024. That's like 3 months ago. So it sounds to me like that data still has to be provided.
That is correct.
So how soon will that be provided?
We will provide that data to them for the year of hiring for this current school year and the new year.
In the new year.
Correct.
Now, in the new year, it could be 12 months.
Yeah, I anticipate they'll have that data by February of 2025.
Is that the same as by January 31st?
No, that's not the same as by January 31st.
Is that the same as February 28th?
That is correct.
Well, that's 2 months from now.
That's correct.
Can you do better?
We'll work to get it to them as soon as possible, but we want to make sure they have the most accurate data.
I see more performance oversight questions. And then there's a requirement. The parties shall jointly develop and conduct 2 mandatory trainings on the content of this agreement. What's the status of that?
Again, once council approves the agreement, those are dates and items that we would schedule thereafter.
The wellness days that you spoke of and that President Pogline spoke of, that's beginning school year 25, 26?
That is correct. We will issue our calendars for the coming years. We typically do that in late winter, early spring. I anticipate by February 2025, we would have issued the calendars for next year with the update for the wellness days. And then the following years, we typically do our calendars 3 years in advance. So we'll have the 25, 26 calendar updated to reflect the wellness days. And then the calendars thereafter will also reflect the wellness days.
So all that will be done in the next several months
That is correct.
before the start of the school year. The 4 morning blocks, how soon does that begin?
Once council approves that, we will begin implementation of that. I anticipate if it is the January 5th timeline, I believe the following week is a 4-day work week. So I believe the week after would be the most appropriate time to begin. I believe my memory serves me correctly, that's the week of January 27th.
So on this one, before February,
That is-
by the end of January, that'll begin.
That is correct.
And ensuring that elementary grade level chairs receive their stipend. Now, my note here says starting in the 2022-23 school year.
Yeah, that is something we have been in discussion with the Washington Teacher Union about because there isn't a current structure for elementary grade chairs. So that would be an item we would need to discuss.
So that's been agreed to, the stipend, but there are details that still have to be worked out with WTU.
Yeah, we currently don't have that role as an official role in DCPS.
That role being
Uh,
elementary grade level chairs.
That is correct.
So do you have a internal deadline for when you'll have this worked out?
I think that's something that we will have to discuss with the Washington Teacher Union.
I'm going to interpret that as you all will work aggressively to get that one implemented too.
Again, there are a number of priorities that have been identified associated with the contract, and we will implement as soon as we're able to address some of these issues collectively.
Let me turn to my colleague, Council Co-Chair Bonds.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you for your responses. The chairman asked 3 of my questions, so I'll have to go deeper. I wanted to really, what I'm confused about is that we knew there would be a contract. And I'm just wondering why I'm hearing that the delay on planning for the implementation is focused on when the contract is actually approved by the council. I think that's what I heard, and that the committees are going to all happen once the contract is approved. And so I just wondered from you, Mr. Chancellor, if you have some insight as to why there would be a delay when we know we're going to have schools, we know we're going to have teachers, we know we're going to have a contract, and just wondered if, because it happens so quickly, within 10 months, that somehow we were caught off guard and therefore did not plan as to how we would implement all of these provisions that are a part of it, when 3/4 of it is a continuation of where we were 3 years ago, 6 years ago. I just wondered.
Yeah, there's a lot that we have addressed that's associated with contracts that were recently approved. I think there's a lot that we need to address, and we do prioritize those. So, for example, the calendars. It may sound simple to adjust the calendars for the school year, but that is a very complex process. And it requires enormous amount of engagement with our school communities. And so we've already proactively started that process so that we can issue calendars to families as quickly as possible. And so there are many other examples I can give you that we've been working on, but I think the idea that all of these things will happen at one time, or we would be presumptuous to assume that everything is in the contract will be implemented before it's officially approved, is also something that we consider as well. So we meet with the Washington Teacher Union to set priorities around our collective bargaining agreement of the issues that we want to tackle first. And I've been pleased with that sequence. I haven't heard any concerns from the Washington Teacher Union directly on any of those issues, and I anticipate that we'll be able to continue to collaborate on these.
All right, and so, and thank you very much for that response. It is understood. So because you are putting together the plan of implementation of this contract, and does this mean there are opportunities for members of the teachers union to be a part of various committees in such a way that they will have an active role in the decision-making process?
Well, that's certainly been the Washington Teachers Union approach in the past. However, I don't want to speak for President Polk-Lyons and their leadership, how they intend to engage their members, but they have included them in committees and conversations and invited them to our regular meeting time between leaders as well. So I don't anticipate that changing, but again, I don't want to speak for them in terms of how they intend to engage their members.
All right, so you're helping me to understand that there's no uniform manner in which we implement the teachers union contract, that each contract is different and new, and therefore we put the processes in place as we plan the implementation.
Yeah, so I think the common thread is that we do it collaboratively. And if there are ever any issues, we have a process of resolving those issues. The way in which they engage their members with MOAs or with committees does look different depending upon that issue. And sometimes there's more engagement, sometimes there's less. But we welcome any engagement structure that the union would like to utilize to keep their members a part of the decision-making process.
All right, and so you indicated that you're going to do the mandatory trainings. Would at least one of the sessions include your leadership and other staff at DC Public Schools? Do you share with them the provisions of the contract, in a sort of like teaching or instructional process so that they understand what to expect?
We do.
All
So
right.
we have already previewed the terms of the contract with our school leaders. So for example, they are aware of the shift with the morning blocks, and they are planning accordingly in terms of how teachers will utilize that time. So we do provide sessions with our school leaders. We have a session with our leaders scheduled in January, where we will also, again, review all of the terms in the contract.
Great. Would you please just share with me about your class coverage and how you see that being implemented in earnest? I was witness to the negotiations when that was one of the issues that was being aired.
Yeah, there are a couple of provisions in the contract that I think we need to build an infrastructure around, especially with technology. I do think we need some record keeping tools so that we can account for when these scenarios occur where there's a need for coverage. So we can ensure that there is a tracking system that we can compensate individuals accordingly when that occurs.
So what would that look like?
I think we're still working
I'm
on.
in the second grade.
Right.
I have to leave. It's an emergency. Who's going to cover my class for the rest of the day? And it's 10 o'clock in the morning and I have to leave.
Right. I think right now, historically, that may have been happening without any tracking. I think what I'm saying is that going forward, we would need to ensure that we have the infrastructure so we have accurate accounting of when that occurs.
Okay, so you will be focused on the accounting of there being a vacancy in that classroom or with those students. And I'm also concerned with how will the students move forward? Because I'm out of the classroom now. So what happens? Who comes in? Or does anyone come in?
Yeah, so if there is a scenario where a teacher needs to cover a class, so let's say I'm at a high school and I'm using one of my planning periods to cover class where a teacher is out for whatever reasons, we will want to ensure that we have a means to accurately account for that if we needed to compensate the educator. But our expectation is that anytime the regular classroom teacher is not available, there are plans for the substitute or any adult that is covering the class so that instruction continues for those students.
All right, and so would a substitute be on call or within the building waiting to, because these occurrences are happening regularly where the teacher is not able to continue for a period of time and we need someone there with the kids. I'm just trying to understand the process. It may seem very elementary to you, but I think the public needs to understand what really happens in our schools.
It's a great question. And first, when a teacher needs to be out, we ask that they use our substitute system to request coverage for that day. We have been very successful in building a robust substitute pool. So the majority of those requests are covered by our substitutes in the substitute pool. If there is an instance where that coverage does not occur through the pool, then we do rely on other resources. There are scenarios where schools have an individual on staff that can cover classes, and sometimes students are shared among teachers to ensure that classes is covered as well.
All right, so my coworker's class of 23 will now be 37 because the kids are going to be in her class. I'm
There are many variations
sincere about
of
this.
there are many variations of how that coverage occurs. That is ultimately dictated by the school leader in administration. It looks very different at each level. In some cases, that may be a paraprofessional, that may be a peer teacher. So again, it just depends on the needs of that school in the moment.
And I do understand that. I'm trying to understand though, is there some uniform process that we have, or does it just happen because it's 10 o'clock in the morning? I'm just wondering, it may be that we don't have a system. I certainly would recommend that we try to get a system if we're gonna modernize our school system.
I agree.
Yeah.
There isn't a system in place that I would be happy with today, satisfied that it would meet the need of us having an accurate account of when these incidents occur and then how we should be compensating people.
All right, now we're talking. We're at the point where, okay. All right, thank you. I'm over my time. But thank you very
Thank you,
much. Council.
Councilmember Bonds. Councilmember Fruman.
Thank you very much, Chairman Mendelson. I want to go back on impact, and there are a bunch of different vehicles for DCPS and the union to collaborate on different kinds of issues, and evaluation isn't one of them. It's not part of the negotiation. You did back in 2019, 2021, get the AU report. And so you went out to try to get information, and I think you dealt with it internally and you made tweaks to the impact system based on your reaction to that AU report. It wasn't a process, as I understand it, in which you were working with representatives of the union to try to get their input on how things might be reformed. And I wonder if there's any receptivity. Now it's not going to be the subject of contract negotiations, but in a way it creates a window to do something collaborative that might lead to a greater buy-in from teachers into the evaluation system. And I wonder if there's any receptivity on your side to trying to engage in some kind of a dialogue with the WTU and other experts about things that might be done in this space.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It is a strategy that I believe that has served us well. So I disagree with President Pope Lyons that since the implementation of impact, it has not been successful. I believe it's one of the reasons why we have an 89% retention rate, which is a strong retention rate, and over 90% of our highly effective teachers return to DCPS. And I believe our outcomes are vastly different than where it were since its inception. But it's not a perfect tool. And it is a tool that we've worked to refine and improve. And with the spirit of continuous improvement, we'll continue to work on it. It's an area where we've solicited feedback from our teachers. It's an area where there always isn't an agreement between DCPS and the WTU on implementation, but we certainly welcome their feedback. And we're happy to provide them with more information. I heard today that there's some need for information about what type of training was provided as relates to racial bias. But the reality is that our teachers of color are being retained at a much higher rate than their peers. And I believe those issues have been addressed, but we want to continue to get feedback, and we're open to continue dialogue around the best way to recognize our teachers for their performance and also give them feedback.
So thank you for that. I mean, I am struck that it becomes a flashpoint. And so we hear witnesses come in and say the system's bad, and then we have you come and you say the system had positive impacts. But I don't want to get hung up on the word. I mean, there are different ideas out there about how the evaluation system might be improved. And in a way, if there were a table around which you could do collaboration with the WTU and other stakeholders, you could bring the temperature down of the discussion, and you could, instead of dueling presentations at council hearings, you could show the data and why it is you believe what you believe, and they could show you what it is, why they believe what they believe. And maybe together you could get to something where there was broader buy-in. And I think there's value in that when workers feel like the system by which they're evaluated is fair. So trying to get to that place, and I know I've seen the data, 60% say it helped with their growth, but then you also have 70% who in the same study were not satisfied with how it works. Can't we use this window for you to get around the table with the WTU, not to negotiate, but to try to work together to see what kinds of things might be done to build confidence in the evaluation system?
Yeah, we have, and we will. I think about where we were in the pandemic, and the Washington Teachers Union came to us and said, hey, we've got to change the model because we're in a different climate. And we did. We continue to solicit perception data from surveys, focus group interviews. We will continue to do that. And we will use that information to inform how we improve the tool. As you said, there are areas where people have said it has served them well, and there's areas where there's been concerns raised. And it's our intent to build upon what's working and think about how we can adjust where areas where our educators are saying it's not working for them.
All right, well, thank you very much again, hoping that there can be some kind of mechanism for collaboration to, as you look at those issues in the next years. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fruman. So I have no further questions for you, Councilmember Bonds. Do you have any further questions?
I do have one. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. I wanted to explore a little bit about the need for substitute teachers. And wondered if you've had conversations with DOES, Department of Employment Services, because they have employment programs for veterans and for seniors, and seniors being a code for retirees, and wondered if that could be a resource if there is a need. Of course, we've heard in the council many times that there is apparently a need for substitute teachers. So just wondered what your thoughts are on that.
Yes, so as I said earlier, over 80% of our sub requests are filled. We've grown the pool, and we do tap into retirees. We have a close working relationship with the retirees, one from DCPS who come back and help us, but retirees from other sectors as well also sign up to be substitutes, and we welcome them to be a part of the pool. And I'm proud of the way that we've been able to build a strong pool for our teachers when they need to take leave so that we have the appropriate coverage. And like I said earlier, we'll continue to work on the infrastructure. For accounting, first step is to ensure that our timekeepers are trained so that the data collection at the school level is strong, that reflects the coverage that takes place, so we can compensate either our substitutes or staff that are covering classes.
All right, and so you also would then be open to having more conversations with perhaps DOES about how you can fill this 20%. You say you're 80% filled, but you got 20% that you're not. And is that something you would be interested in, Mr.
Yes,
Chancellor?
I talk with Dr. Morris Hughes often about the way we can assist each other, and we'll continue to tap into that resource. I believe that we're approaching like 85% on most cases of those requests being filled, but we work to ensure that they are. I think the timing of which the request goes in often can impact, and then the duration. Sometimes we have extended leaves that are a little bit more complicated to fill with coverage than others, but we'll continue to collaborate with them.
Right. And if this were a opportunity, if this hearing was about jobs and workforce, I would be inclined to ask you if you had thought about an apprentice program for our young people where they could learn the trade of working in the education arena, not necessarily in the classroom, but in other fields as well, and in the classroom. But I know that you would like to do that anyway.
Yes, so
Okay.
we are collaborating with the Office of State Superintendent of Education on a partnership for a new teacher apprenticeship program. We're excited to grow our own. I think that's one of the areas that President Pogue Lyon highlighted as well.
That's correct.
We share that interest, and not just our students, but also our paraprofessionals have been a strong pool of candidates that can earn their teacher credentials and come work for us in DCPS. So we look forward to having more of our students come back and serve in our district.
Thank you for putting that on the record. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Co-Chair Bonds. That's going to conclude the questions for this hearing. I am serious that we will be following up probably the performance oversight with regard to the status of getting these committees going that are part of the contract. I appreciate your testimony and Mr. Maxwell, your testimony. I want to note the record will be open until 12 p.m. That's noon on Tuesday, December 31st. If anyone wishes to submit additional testimony, statements, comments, and that would be for members of the public as well. This hearing was limited to just those who testified. I intend to bring this for the council's vote on January 7th. And what we have is the document that was submitted on or about December 6th with the amendment that was submitted earlier this week, which is that revised wage schedule. That's going to conclude this hearing or roundtable. The time's 11:47 a.m.